It was the 3rd of November 2006. 27-year-old Justine Abshire was in the honeymoon period of her marriage. As a newlywed, she had a lot to look forward to. Justine wanted to have children. Her husband of just 5 months, Eric Abshire, had 2 children from a previous relationship, and Justine adored them. They met in 1999 when they both worked at Lou's home improvement store. Justine was a cashier, and Eric was her manager. She was just 20 years old. He was 26 and told her he had 2 young daughters. After Eric's military service in the Marines, they tied the knot, and he established his own hauling business, driving a dump truck. Justine also found a fitting job as a kindergarten teacher at Emerald Hill Elementary in Culpeper, Virginia. On the mentioned date, November 3rd, Justine went to work, but her colleagues noticed something amiss. They observed her seemingly swollen eyes and assumed she had been crying. However, Justine reassured them, attributing her condition to allergies. Later that day, during her UVA master's degree class, colleagues encountered her again. She arrived 30 minutes late, wearing sunglasses indoors. When the class concluded at 7 p.m., Justine departed promptly. Little did her co-workers know that this would mark the final time they would ever see her. At 1:57 a.m., a distressing 911 call reported a hit and run on Taylorsville Road in Barbersville, Virginia. Upon arrival, the police found Eric in a state of hysteria, cradling his lifeless wife, Justine, in the middle of the road. Tragically, it was evident that Justine had sustained fatal injuries from a motor vehicle impact. Eric recounted to the police that Justine had called him at 1:19 a.m., informing him of her car breakdown and requesting assistance. She was approximately 5 miles away from their residence. Responding swiftly, Eric hopped on his motorcycle and reached the location she specified, only to discover her lying in the road. In his efforts to aid Justine, Eric sat with her, covering her with his jacket before embarking on a search for assistance. He approached several nearby houses, knocking on doors in an attempt to find help. The call to 911 was eventually made by one of the homeowners at 1:57 a.m. Eric later admitted to the police that he had his cell phone in his pocket, though he hadn't initially realized it. While on paper at first the scene appeared like a hit-and-run case, that view changed very quickly. The police investigation unveiled a lack of typical evidence associated with a hit-and-run on Taylorsville Road in Barbersville, Virginia. Notably, there were no broken glass, skid marks, tire marks, debris, or blood on Justine or her clothing, despite the severe injuries she sustained. This absence led authorities to believe that her death wasn't a result of a random collision, but rather a deliberate act. Further complicating the situation, the police discovered that Justine's car, despite Eric's assertion of mechanical issues, was in working order with no defects found. This inconsistency raised suspicions about the accuracy of Eric's account. Justine was very close to her parents, Heidi and Stephen Swartz, and her sister Lauren Swartz, and they were devastated when they received a call from Eric's brother notifying them that Justine was dead. Their shock and devastation turned to confusion. They knew Justine well. She was afraid of the dark. She was even described as being afraid of her own shadow, so it made no sense to them that she would choose to drive alone at night. The perplexity deepened when considering the circumstances of her body being discovered 600 feet away from her car, which contained her purse, coat, and keys. This raised questions about why she would leave these belongings and walk away from the vehicle, especially when she had called Eric to come and collect her. Only 2 days after Justine's memorial service, a significant revelation unfolded. Heidi, Justine's mother, entered a restaurant and, overwhelmed with emotion, broke down. Sensing her distress, a compassionate restaurant employee offered assistance, prompting Heidi to share the heartbreaking story of Justine, describing her as the kindergarten teacher who had been fatally struck by a car. To Heidi's shock, the woman revealed a startling truth. Justine had not died in a hit-and-run. She had been murdered, and suspicion pointed to her husband Eric as the prime suspect. It transpired that some people believed that Eric was involved in Justine's death. When questioned by the police, Eric presented an account of the evening, asserting its normalcy. According to him, Justine returned home after 7 p.m., having attended her class, and he arrived shortly after. He mentioned being with Justine for a while until he received a call from Martha Jefferson Hospital, where his ailing mother was. The call conveyed the distressing news of his mother's deteriorating condition. Eric told police that he went back to the hospital and was there until 11:30 p.m. He did not go straight home after the hospital. Instead, he went to their storage unit on Route 33 in Ruckversville. He stored his motorcycle there. Eric left his car at the storage unit and took the motorcycle out and went riding. He told police that he wanted to clear his head. According to Eric's account, he returned home around 12:30 a.m. At that time, Justine was awake and eager to talk. However, an argument ensued between them as Justine wished to discuss his mother's health, a topic Eric was reluctant to address. He conveyed to the police that he expressed the need for some solitude, and in response, Justine allegedly remarked, "Well, maybe I need to be alone too." According to Eric, Justine departed and drove away in her 2002 Ford Mustang. Eric informed the police that he wasn't concerned, anticipating Justine's return, and casually watched television. His next contact with Justine occurred at 1:19 a.m. when he received an angry call from her. She explained that her car had broken down and requested him to pick her up, providing the exact location. He mentioned that it took him around 15 minutes to leave the house after receiving Justine's call, as he needed to put on his shoes, grab his jacket, keys, and helmet. Eric asserted that he located her between 1:39 a.m. and 1:44 a.m. The police found Eric's account suspicious, especially when considering the crime scene and Justine's injuries. This led them to launch a comprehensive investigation into the circumstances surrounding Justine's death. It would take 4 years, but police finally had enough to officially charge Eric. He was charged with the first-degree murder of his wife. The prosecution asserted that Eric committed the murder with the motive of wanting to end his marriage and for financial gain. The court was informed that in the months leading up to the incident in November, Justine underwent a significant transformation. She ceased meeting with friends, ignored calls, and even declined a friend's housewarming gift of flowers, citing Eric's prohibition on accepting gifts. The prosecution contended that Justine was killed at a different location and then placed on the road where she was discovered, all part of Eric's plan to stage a hit and run. Their argument posited that this was orchestrated to secure a $1.5 million insurance payout. According to the prosecution, the nature of Justine's injuries contradicted the hypothesis of a vehicular collision. She sustained 113 blunt trauma injuries, including multiple broken bones, lacerated organs, and 23 head wounds. Strikingly, there was minimal blood at the scene. Testimonies from 2 medical examiners, presented by the prosecution, challenged the notion that Justine's death resulted from being hit by a car while standing on the road. Instead, they argued that she was subjected to a brutal assault, strangulation, and subsequently run over after death. Dr. Todd Lukasevic, who conducted Justine's autopsy, testified that his findings aligned with manual strangulation. He identified deep tissue bruising in the neck muscles and hemorrhages in the eye and lip. He testified that Justine suffered numerous severe internal injuries. Some wounds did not bleed, and this indicated that they were caused after Justine was already dead. He said that he found less than half the blood he would have expected pooled in her chest and abdominal cavities. The second medical examiner highlighted that the average female body typically contains 5 liters of blood, yet less than 1 liter was recovered from Justine. This inconsistency, according to the prosecution, did not align with the scarcity of blood found on the road, supporting their argument that she was killed at a different location. Allison Crawford, who dated Eric in high school and was the mother of his 2 children, testified that less than 2 hours before Eric discovered Justine on the road, he inquired about their future together. There were 43 calls between them that day, during which Eric expressed lingering feelings for Allison. In court, Allison stated, "He asked if there was any chance for our relationship," revealing Eric's admission of regret for marrying Justine. Another witness testified on behalf of the prosecution. Cecil Roebuck said that he was on the side roads of Greene County late that night in search of a school bus. He told the court he was unfamiliar with the roads, so pulled his car into a driveway to turn around. Cecil claimed that a man approached him and told him his wife's car was almost out of gas. He asked Cecil to follow him to a gas station, but before they reached the gas station, the man pulled his car over and told Cecil that he ran out of gas too. He asked Cecil for a lift back to his house, and he obliged. Cecil said that he did not connect the incident with Justine's case until he saw a program about Justine's death 2 years later. He told the court he believed the man was Eric. and he had helped him stage the hit and run, albeit unbeknown to him at the time. The court was apprised of Eric's financial challenges during the proceedings. Testifying before the court, Justine's father, Steve Swartz, revealed that his daughter was the primary credit holder for the couple, and at the time of her death, they were burdened with a debt of $85,000. Insurance claims adjusters provided testimony concerning several policies with Eric as the beneficiary. Less than a fortnight after Justine's passing, Eric submitted an uninsured motorist claim that, if approved, would have entitled him to $100,000, with the potential for an additional $1.5 million if the commercial aspect was sanctioned. Notably, Justine's name was listed on the insurance for one of the dumpster trucks. In 2009, Eric filed for bankruptcy, ultimately receiving $330,000, which was utilized to settle outstanding debts. This financial backdrop added a crucial dimension to the court's understanding of the case. During the trial, some evidence was presented in the absence of the jury, including allegations of an affair Eric supposedly had a month before his wedding and just 3 days after Justine's death. Additionally, it was suggested that he possessed explicit photos of a woman, but tore them up to avoid negative perceptions. The prosecution argued that Eric's cell phone records contradicted his claim of being at Martha Jefferson Hospital when he asserted, suggesting he was actually at home during critical periods. This, according to the prosecution, provided him with ample time to commit the crime. They told the jury that there were 2 periods late in the evening and into the following morning that were of particular importance, from 10:04 p.m. to 11:23 p.m. and from 12:08 a.m. to 1:19 a.m., when a call from Justine's phone came in. The cell phone record showed that he was at home and not at the hospital at that time. The prosecution underscored to the jury that Eric's use of his phone 157 times on the day of the incident made his claim of only realizing his cell phone was in his pocket after finding Justine's body highly implausible. Furthermore, the prosecution pointed out Eric's background as a Marine with CPR and first aid training, emphasizing that despite this training, he allegedly made no attempt to assist Justine. Adding a compelling and unsettling detail, the prosecution disclosed that Eric had a derogatory nickname for Justine, calling her Thing. The defense steadfastly argued that Justine's death resulted from a hit-and-run accident. They maintained that Eric's alibi was solid, asserting that he was at Martha Jefferson Hospital until 11:30 p.m. visiting his mother, and subsequently went to a storage unit to retrieve his motorcycle. The defense contended that the timeline presented by the prosecution did not allow sufficient time for Eric to both kill Justine and stage a hit and run. In support of their claim of a happy marriage, the defense presented Eric's brother as a witness who had lived with the couple for a period. He testified to the genuine happiness in Eric and Justine's relationship, emphasizing his positive interactions with Justine. To challenge the prosecution's case, the defense cast doubt on the credibility of witness Cecil. They believed he was motivated by the $50,000 reward for information offered by Justine's parents and was hoping to receive favorable treatment in relation to 2 felony fraud charges he was facing from a $10,000 debt. The defense aimed to undermine Cecil's reliability as a witness, questioning his intentions and potential biases. Despite the defense's efforts to challenge the case, including claims about the medical examiner's alleged omission of a specific procedure, the jury ultimately found Eric guilty of first-degree murder. The decision was reached based on the evidence presented during the trial, which included the prosecution's arguments about the nature of Justine's injuries, the timeline of events, and Eric's actions. As a result of the guilty verdict, Eric was sentenced to life in prison. During Eric's sentencing hearing, the court heard poignant victim impact statements, including one from Justine's sister Lauren. Her sister Lauren said, "For the 7 years before she was killed by Eric, I watched my sister's life start to fade. She became quiet, withdrawn. She became poor. She became scared. She became the victim of domestic violence, which I saw with my own eyes. In hindsight, I feel like I watched her die." Lauren's testimony during the sentencing hearing portrayed a distressing picture of the relationship between Eric and Justine. She asserted that she witnessed Eric physically shove Justine before they were married, and Justine confided in her about several other incidents of abuse. In the months leading up to that November day, Justine's family and friends noticed a change in her personality. Justine had always been kind, loving, and friendly, and while she still had those qualities, She stopped meeting friends and colleagues for social visits. She was withdrawn and quiet, a shell of her former self. The testimony further revealed that Justine, influenced by a sense of worthlessness, made considerable efforts to please Eric. Even on their wedding day, there were signs of discord. Eric was distant, opting to go out on his motorcycle alone. Justine missed several activities related to her own wedding, including lunch, and spent the second night alone at the hotel. Notably, Eric's violent past was brought to light during the hearing. He had previously faced charges of malicious wounding and was the subject of a protective order by the mother of his 2 children. Eric claimed this arose from a verbal disagreement that turned physical, asserting that she attacked him and hit him in the face with a remote control. In self-defense, he claimed to have grabbed her by the shirt and throat. During the 4 years that police were investigating the case, Justine's family fought hard to ensure there would be some form of justice. Her father, Steve Swartz, said, "In addition to wanting Justine's case solved, the other thing we sincerely hope is that no one else gets hurt before that happens."